this is what he said to his father. You ready? Look at verse number 12, 13 there. Father, if you would just go ahead and die, I could get what I'm supposed to have because you're nothing more to me than a paycheck. That's what he said. You say, well, I don't see that. How do you not see that when he says, give me the inheritance? When do you get an inheritance? When they die. He's looking dead in his father's face and saying, if you were dead, I could get what I'm supposed to have and I could do whatever I want to do. You know, we're never told, interestingly through this parable, about the emotion behind that to the father. That's got to hurt. What if you heard that? What if Mark, they said, we wish you were dead so we could get our stuff? That's got to hurt your feelings. That's got to make you kind of go, whew, kind of folks am I raising here? The younger son says, give me what you owe me. Now the father does. Why? I don't know. But he does. He gives it to him. And it's not long after, the Bible will tell us, that the younger boy has taken everything that would be his inheritance and has turned it into liquid cash. When we divide all this up, he's going to get X amount of sheep and goats and cows. He's going to get X amount of land. He's going to get this and that. He might get some coins here and there. What he's going to do is sell off all of that stuff for whatever he can get. And he's going to take that folding money and stick it in his pocket, and he's going to go off and have a good time. And that's his choice. Is it okay for him to choose that? Is that a viable choice for him? Yeah. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to understand. You are free to choose whatever you want to choose. You are free to do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, but you are not free from the consequences of those choices. He's not thinking about those consequences. He's doing exactly what he wants to do. Is that his choice? Yeah. He goes and burns through that money doing God knows what with God knows who for however long it takes to let him burn through all that liquid cash. And then guess what? Bless his heart. There is a famine that destitutes the land. What does that mean? That means it's so bad they can't produce food, vegetable-wise. They have livestock. They have whatever they have in reserve, but it's going to be one of those that devastate the land. It's no more happy-go-lucky times where we can just walk through a field and pick something off a tree and eat it. We are now searching for food. This young fella finds himself without money, without friends, without a place to live, and so he's going to have to get a job. The worst sentence in their vocabulary. You need to get a do-do-do. Got to get one. And what's he going to do? What's he qualified for? What is his degree in? Nothing? Right now his degree is in the school of hard knocks. That's right. Stupidity. What's he good at? Well, I think he should start at the top rung. Well, why do you think that? You ain't good at nothing. You don't have any skill. You don't have any experience. Where are you going to start? Management. Middle management. That sounds right. You're right down here. You are one level up from a hobo begging on the corner for some money. Why? Well, you don't have any experience. You don't have anything. His job is to go out and feed pigs. How many of you here in the farmland have pigs? Wonderful smelling animals. What a great animal that is. I have pigs. I have a pig cut up in pieces in my freezer. And I will take a portion of him out and smoke that that and talk about how wonderful it was for God to make pigs and how Jesus never tasted bacon. Here's a Jewish boy. Don't lose sight of this. Here's a Jewish boy who has been banned for his entire life from even touching a pig because they're unclean. To now, he's feeding this animal. And not only is he feeding him, he looks down at the hog slop and says, boy, I wish I had some of that. Pigs are not a pleasing animal with aroma. And I think that's a direct reflection of their food. It's not a pleasing aroma there either. And here it speaks of this thing called a carob pod. I've got a carob pod from Israel at my house. It's about this big. And it's brown. And it has brown seeds in there. And when it's fully mature, it's turned brown. It looks like a stick of beef jerky. And it's packed with protein. They say you can eat it. We tried that. It's a little harder than beef jerky to eat. But you can physically eat it. But I'm going to tell you this. I've been hungry. I don't know that I've ever been that hungry. I tried it once because I thought I was going to be slick and do something cool, but no, I don't want any of that. Who cares? We deal with pigs all the time. He's just feeding a pig. What's the big deal, right? Justin, you lived in Eagleville all your life? Close about?
I live in Eagleville.
Let's say Justin turns out he's 19 years old. He's got him a wild hair. He's going to go to L.A. and make it big. Singing and dancing. That's exactly what it looked like to me. And acting. And he gets out there, and what he realizes is the singing and acting and dancing career just doesn't just fall into your lap. He spends all of the money he has to get out there and set up shop and start working that way, because obviously jobs will just fall in your lap. And so he runs out of money, and he's going to have to take a job. You know why? Rent's due on the first. I mean, I don't know how to tell you that any more plainly. If you don't have it on the first, you need to be looking for a place on the second. So he takes a job out there. And he has gotten himself a janitorial job. That's a good job. Right? Yeah. And so as he is working through this office building, we see him exploring his janitorial skills. Only I didn't tell you where it was. The only job he can find is being the janitor, the evening janitor at the local abortion clinic. Yeah, you see Taylor, how Taylor looked at me like, what? That looked like, oh, I can't believe it. That's the look that Jesus got when he told these people this boy took a job feeding pigs. The exact thing you thought of when you popped up and went, ooh, is exactly what they thought of this kid. I'm not going to take that job. Anybody with any kind of sense knows God knows they wouldn't take that job. You ever been real hungry? Now, let me say this. I am not up here saying just take whatever job you can get. I'm telling you what Jesus said, that this boy took this job. And he would look at that slop and say, boy, I wish I could eat some of that. I don't know the depths of that desperation. I don't understand that, but that's where he's at. You know, when they bring that steak out to you and it's sizzling and it's got all the trimmings around look at it and your mouth starts to water. This is fixing to be good right here. Can you imagine looking down in a bucket of pig slop and having your mouth begin to water? How old is that slop? How many flies have been around it to lay eggs? What are those squirmy little things in there? Pigs don't care. They're just going to eat it up. And here's the boy looking in the pot saying, That sure does look tasty. Verse 17 of Luke 15 is probably my favorite verse found within the New Testament. And it's at the very beginning. Are you ready? When he came to himself. What in the world? When he came to himself. You understand where he's at? You understand he's looking over in this pot, wanting to eat this food, and now he realizes where he was and where he still ought to be. And exactly where he is. Knee-deep in a hog pen, wanting to eat some hog food. When he came to himself, he said, how many servants in my father's house have bread enough, this is the King James Version, and to spare, and I perish with hunger. I will arise, I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight. No more worthy to be called thy son. Now, he makes one mistake right here. Here's his mistake. Are you ready? He's working his way where he's supposed to be, but his one mistake falls in this last statement. Make me as one of your hired servants. The more you read through that in the original and in the English, what you find out is that is a statement and not a question. I want you to make me as one of the servants. At what point does he say, I'm no more worthy to be called thy son, could I at least work for you? No, you go ahead and make me this way. Perhaps, and I've read this from one other, and it has a little bit of viability to it, and so if it doesn't have any kind of recourse, I don't say anything about it. But this one, maybe. He said perhaps it's the way they address each other and the way they speak to each other in that culture. Maybe so. If that's the case, we see him completely knocked to the ground and humbled. If not, we see that he's got just a little bit more work to go. That's the entire side of the younger brother. That's all we know about it. Found in the first 8 or 9 verses there of Luke 15, beginning in verse 11. Now we're going to skip the middle, and we're going to go to the older brother, then we're going to come back and pick up the father, okay? Let's go to the older brother. His older brother was in the field. This is verse 25. And returned, came near the house, heard dancing and music. You ever heard a party? You know what a party sounds like? So does he. And for some reason, he's taking off his boots by the back door and he hears a party. And he's thinking, all right, it's about to be on now. He calls somebody out there, one of the servants out there, and says, what's going on? And the servant happily says, your brother's come back. Your father has killed the fatted calf. We took this boy in, and now we're ready to go. Look at verse number 28. He's mad. The older brother's angry. The older brother's upset that the younger brother's made it back. Why is he so upset? What's the problem? Father comes out and he says, look here. Served you all my life. Everything you ever asked, I did. Matter of fact, you didn't ever give me any kind of kid of a goat where we could have a party with my friends. But as soon as your son comes back, you know, that son who's probably been with hookers and all kinds of things. As soon as he comes back, you just give him everything back. Parents, raise your hand. Can you tell this boy's lying? How can you tell this boy's lying? Amen. This is what we hear. I always do. You don't always. You hadn't always. Matter of fact, I hadn't always either. But this boy says, I've always done everything you asked me to. Really? I never had to go down and say, why does your room look like that? I never had to go down and say, why are these cups and plates in this room? I never had to go down and say, why do you have a pile of clothes here that are not washed? You don't have to take it out into a rock and beat it. All you got to do is put it in a machine. I don't have to say that. Oh, well, this is different in my house, huh? I always did what you said, Father. No, you didn't. You're a big fat liar. But I understand where it's coming from. He's the only one who's been working the farm. If it got done in the house while this young son was gone, he did it. True or false? True. The weight of the entire farm and the existence of the family is on him. I don't know how old he is. He's older than the younger brother, but it's a lot of pressure. I'm sure he's tired and hot. And I think he tells on himself. As soon as this your son who spent all his money with prostitutes has come back, where do you read about that in the chapter? All we read about is that he did things that were immoral. And perhaps maybe this older brother is saying, you know what, if I was gone, here's how I'd spent my money. You give him everything that he needs when he came back. The younger brother chose to leave. The younger brother chose to squander every bit of his money. The younger brother chose to be in a place where he had no friends. The younger brother chose the wrong job. The younger brother finally came to himself and went back home. The older brother didn't leave. That was a choice. The older brother stayed around and did the work, and that was a choice. The older brother refused to go inside, and that was a choice. The older brother is mad at the younger brother because it seems like the younger brother had a lot of fun that he didn't get to have. Go back. To verse 20. The younger brother made choices. The older brother made choices. But even before 20, we'll go back to 12. The father in this made choices. Go all the way back to 12 where that younger son says, give me the portion of goods that belong to me. Give me my inheritance. The choice the father could have said, very easily could have been, no. Get back out in the field. Don't let me have to beat you across the head and the shoulder area. Get on back out there. He could have easily said that. But the choice is the same choice Linda Hayes gave me when I was much younger. Older people finish this one out because these younger people don't know. I don't think they know this phrase. Give them enough rope. What do you think that younger son did? Oh, look what I can do. The older father said, here's a lesson he's going to have to learn, and he's going to have to learn it the hard way. Why? Because he's not paying attention any other way. Did you know that we know when you decide to make stupid choices? Do you know that? Sometimes we sit back and watch because it's fun. Sometimes we sit back and watch because you got to learn. You know, it hurts for us to see you do that too. I can tell you, I've been working with you long enough, I can tell you when you decide X, Y, or Z, how it's going to end up. I spoke to one in our group before we left about the choice that person made. Still that person's choice, isn't it? Maybe consider a couple of things you might not have. The father knows exactly what's going to happen when this younger boy leaves. He knows exactly what's going to happen when he sees the back of his shoulders going out that door. He knows exactly. Why did he stop it? You think that was the only point in time that younger brother would have ever left or ever had the chance to leave? All you're going to do is delay it. That's all you're going to do. Older generation, let me ask you a question. When you were about 18, 19, 20 years old, could anybody tell you anything? They can't tell you now. What you shaking your head no for? No. They hardly can tell us now, right? They couldn't tell us anything. I know all this. Best of luck to you. What I found out is I was way smarter at 21 than I am at 46. I knew everything. Now I keep looking back and figure out how much I didn't know even then. The father knew exactly what the younger son was going to do. And interestingly, in this choice, when the younger son decided to leave and the older son decided to stay, he knew it was going to be tough on him too. He knew that just as well as he knew that younger son was leaving. He knew that the burden of the entire farm was going to be on that boy's shoulders. It was going to be tough. Eric, when was the first year you started actually farming? I mean, getting down after it farming, not farming with others, but with you. When's that? Was it hard? I hear you farmed a few days in your life too. When was the first year you started? Was it before 2020? Was the first year hard? Mm-hmm. Do you know more now than you did then? Yeah. You know why? Because he's experienced more. He's seen more. He's gone through more. And this young fella, who's even the older brother, but he's still a young fella, is going to have to start at square one, and it's not going to be easy. And the father knows when he looks out there, this kid's going to come home tired and hungry and dirty and kind of lay in the bed at night and go, what in the world am I doing? He knows that's a choice. As we go further down in this particular parable, we see the perspective of that younger son. And then verse 20, the younger son rose and went to his father. Now verse 20 is almost as interesting as the inheritance side of the idea of the Jewish nation as to what Luke tells us about this guy. As Luke tells us something about this guy here that you may have never even paid attention to, where he breaks just about every social norm known to man in the Israelite nation. One, older folks, I would be in that group in the Israelite nation. Older folks don't run. Ever. Oh, my head's on fire. Oh, well, I guess it just burned up. My house is on fire. Oh, well. They don't run. They do not run. When a soldier in the Israelite army then was in battle, if he were running, they would still wear the long kind of skirt robes, but he would take that robe up in between his legs and tuck it into his belt so it made kind of shorts for him, and he would begin to run that way. So when we read about this older fella right here, the father saw him and ran to him. You can see him tucking those long robes up into his belt and running after this fellow. It's not the first time that this guy has been looking out his window hoping that he would see that particular son. This ain't the first day. Matter of fact, on the top of their houses, they would have a porch, what we would call a porch, and it wasn't on the front of their houses. And that's where they would spend the evening time. It was outdoor space before outdoor space was a thing. They'd spend their evenings there, cool afternoons, have a little bit of a shady spot, and enjoy the time with the family. Not a lot of Hulu and streaming access going on there, so you got to do something. I wonder how many days he stood on one edge and looked out as far as he could in this particular direction, only to have to come back over here, look out as far as he could over here in this particular direction, and this way as he's making a 360-degree rotation around his house, looking for that boy to come home. In my mind, I can see him one day looking out that spot off of his roof. And he sees some kind of shadowy figure, and he kind of says, that looks like a person. Only to have him look harder and more intently, and as that person gets closer, he says, that looks like the younger son. Only to have that son get closer, he says, I know that walk. That's the guy I've been looking for. I'm going to pull my skirt up, tuck it in here. I'm going to run out to him. And mine would say, yours would say he had compassion on him. Mine would say his heart went out to him. Didn't we speak about compassion last night? And he ran out and he hugged this boy who smelled like a hog and kissed him tenderly. Don't miss this idea. He has compassion toward him. He runs out, he hugs him as tightly as he can, and kisses him tenderly because it's his son. The father here has made a decision to break all the social norms in order to make sure his son knows that he's going to be warmly greeted at the house. He could have left his robes down. He could have sat on that house and said, he's going to have to come up here and beg if he wants, which would have been the social norm. Not this father. Parents, let me ask you a question. Do you still see them as little bitty babies? At 20 years old, I still see them as little bitty babies. And I want to protect them. And I want to take care of them. And I imagine as that father looks out and sees that son coming up, that he sees him as that little boy that he wants to protect and provide for. He runs out. His heart goes out to him, kisses him tenderly. Then he gives him a few things. His choice now is, do I make him as a hired servant, or do I restore him back in full graces of the house? What are we going to do? He says, first, bring forth the best robe. Number one, this boy stinks. Get him some better clothes. He smells like a hog pen. That ain't going to help him that much. It's going to take some of the smell out, but it ain't going to help him that much. He's going to need to bathe a little bit too. Secondly, bring a ring and put it on his hand. Here we're dealing with a household that is some sort of nobility. They have some sort of status in the community. He's a leader of some sort, and these children are a reflection of him. And he said, I want you to put that ring back on his finger so everybody knows that he's mine. Sometimes we look at him and say, oh, that might be a little more embarrassing than I want our family to go through. Still mine. There's a third thing that's brought out for him. The difference between rich people and poor people in Jesus' day lie right here. Shoes. Uh-oh. Shoes. If you have shoes, you're rich. If you have your little dogs out for free, poor. Guess what? This boy didn't have on any shoes. He's broke as a joke. Well, he gets back in that house, he's got shoes on his feet. He's got that ring on his finger. He's got that robe on his body. Why? He has been not put in the place of a servant. He has been put back in the place of a son. As a father's choice was he was not willing to make him a servant. He was, however, willing to restore him as a son. You say those are some interesting choices from the father. Oh, we're not done yet. Remember that older brother? We still have some choices from the father. Turn over to about verse number 28. So as we fast forward in this parable and we see the older son pitching a fit on the back porch, not coming in because he's all hurt that his brother's there. Did you notice that he's outside also? Did you notice that when that younger brother was outside, that father ran out to him? Yeah. Verse 28, when this older brother is out there and he's pitching a fit, acting like a little heathen, what's the father do? He goes out to him too. Here's a choice. Father has a choice to stay inside and say, tell that boy quit acting like a fool and get in here. He has a choice to go out to it. The father went out to both of them. He lets his son, the older son dominate the conversation and say everything that's on his mind. You think that older son, you think the older brother thought those things? Yeah, I think he meant those things. You think he at least thought in his head he was justified over what he was saying? He's the only one that's been there working. He's the only one that's done this or that, and the father hasn't given him anything. They hadn't had a party yet for him. In his mind, sounds like he's telling them truth, right? Go all the way back to verse number 12. You remember where Will and Tyler and I are right up here and we're getting our piles of cash? If the father does that before he dies, guess what he has? Nothing. He doesn't own anything. That boy, that older son, owns everything on that farm, and whatever that farm will produce from then on belongs right to him. You never gave me a kid. He doesn't have anything. If you wanted a kid, you as the head of this house now legally should have said, kill that goat, we're going to eat it, and invite some friends over. He didn't have anything to give him. You should have given me this or that. He didn't have anything. But the father let that older son say everything he wanted to say. And look at verse number 31. After this young man shoots his whole mouth off, after After he just says everything he wants to say, the father says, son, you're always with me, and everything that's here is yours. The fact of the matter is, it was right and good that we kill the fatted calf for the younger. As we as a family thought he had gone off and something happened to him and he died. The rejoicing that we're having is that he's back home, safe and sound. There's not going to be another division of property. There's not going to be another this or that. But it's still my choice if he's going to be a son or not. These are still my servants who have been serving me for years, and even if I didn't have rights to that fatted calf and I said, go kill that fatted calf, they've been here a while and they're going to say, all right. Not only right that we celebrate that, it's necessary that we celebrate that. Because while you look at this and say, everything that we had, I've had to do since he's been gone, I look at it and say, but he's back. Well, how long was he gone? Who cares? He's back. Well, what did he do while he was gone? Who cares? He's back. The younger son was outside of the house. He was lost. The older boy is outside of the house and he's lost. What do you think the meaning of the parable is? You better be inside that house. Go back to chapter 15 and verse 1. In the scope of verses 11 through verse 32, let's reread the setting. Are you ready? Then the younger son came near to hear him. However, the older son complained, saying, this man welcomes with sinners and eats with them. Who's he talking to? He's talking to this group who's with them to say, you guys are the younger son and you need to come back. And you guys are the older son and you need to get in the house. I wish Luke 15 had verse 33 and 34. And I wish it ended this way. Then the older brother came to his senses, walked inside the house, and enjoyed seeing his younger brother whom he missed so dearly, and they lived a happy, functioning life. But never told that. I know the younger brother was in that house who came back. I don't know if the older brother ever did. I don't know if he ever came off the back porch. I don't know if he ever swallowed his pride and walked in the house. And so when I look at myself in Luke chapter 15, I've asked myself this: am I the younger son who's asking for money? Or am I the younger son who is preparing to go act like a fool? Or am I the younger son who's just about starving to death? Or am I the younger son who's coming to himself? Or am I the older son who's just too hard-headed to accept the mercy of the Father and go inside? Which one am I? And if I look at it properly, at any time in my life, I can be any one of them. I can be any one of them? Yep. You know, when we look through the parables that we've looked through this week, God expecting something from his children ought not be new to us. He does expect something, like the parable of the talents. He expected something from the 5-talent man, expected something from the 2-talent man. He didn't get what he expected from that 1-talent man. It shouldn't be out of the ordinary for us as we evangelize our community to know that there are 4 kinds of souls, maybe even more. There are those who are not ready, that there are those who will not be rooted deeply, and that there'll be those who are choked out by the world, and then there'll be those who produce and produce and produce. It shouldn't be out of the ordinary for us to see a man who doesn't have compassion even after compassion was extended to him with that unmerciful servant. But the one that really ought to hit us right in the mouth is Luke 15, 11 through 32, where at any point in time, I can be any portion of those boys. And I hope I never am. Hope there's a third boy involved that we just hadn't read about. And the third boy found himself living there and taking care of the father, even in his old age, and making sure everything that he needed he got and was taken care of. And then we see him following after his father's footsteps. I'd like to be the third guy. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to work at it. Because after so many years of being in the church, I really understand the mindset of the older boy. It's hard. Why am I the only one working? What else am I supposed to do? Is anybody going to help? I feel like I'm all alone here. What I forget is 8 billion other people who occupy this earth have the opportunity to never choose to serve God, and I'm still obligated to do what I'm supposed to do. So if nobody ever chooses, if the church, it comes down to one person and it's just me, I'm still obligated to do what I'm supposed to do. If the church came down to one and I knew that, would I still ask myself, why am I the only one? Why ain't anybody helping me? Maybe I'd look at it a little differently. Maybe why they're not helping you is because they're not here. That younger brother wasn't there to help. I wonder, did he help when he came back? You see, ladies and gentlemen, the quintessential aspect of Christian living is compassion toward others in the same way God has shown compassion to me. And when I see that, I just might understand where they are and why they are. Just might be able to help them out. And I just might be able to drag Andy kicking and screaming right to heaven. And that'd be all right. And he might be able to drag me. Don't worry about who's doing the work. Worry about how much more you could be doing. What else can I do? What else should I be doing? How else can I help? What else can I do? I wish we had another week and a half. We could cover all the other parables, right? No. Maybe if we stayed up here 24/7. We've gotten 4 out of a bunch. And knowing those parables, what are we going to do with it? We got this cool t-shirt. Helps us remember the week. Had a fantastic time. Who cares? What are we going to do with it? The wrinkles in our brains, what are we going to do with it? We have the option to do something with them, or we have the option to do nothing with them. And you have some cousins who live in Alabama who choose to do nothing with them a lot. But I'm assuming that their cousins who live in Eagleville are much, much better people. As we study the Word of God, we understand what it says. Now we have to change what we do and why we do it. All right. That's us. Let's go have a hot dog.